Dear colleagues and distinguished guests, welcome to the post-conference keynote speech session of the 14th International Congress of Educational Research, which was organized by the Çanakkale 18 Mart University and International Association of Educators 2 weeks ago. And the theme of the Congress was the big data and data analytics in educational policy and research. The Congress was organized by in contribution with the Turkish Ministry of Education, International Association of Educators, Turkish Education Research Association, and International Association of Qualitative Research. I would like to thank the sponsors and organizers of this Congress for their invaluable contribution to this event. Today we are hosting dear colleague, Dr. Dirk Hastedt. He is the Executive Director of the International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement. It's called IEA at this panel session. Dirk was one of our keynote speakers at our Congress, and since the Congress was organized in the hybrid format, the keynote sessions were broadcasted both online and on-site at the opening ceremony of the Congress. Therefore, it was very difficult to get the questions from the participants in the hybrid format at the opening ceremony. Therefore, the conference organizing committee decided to hold the post-conference keynote sessions after the Congress in order to give more opportunities to the Congress participants to ask questions to our keynote speakers. And I would like to thank Dr. Nihat Gürel Kahveci, the Secretary General of the International Association of Educators, and the coordinator, Dr. Levent Çetinkaya, the INASET coordinator, for giving us this opportunity to meet with the keynote speakers. You can access the recordings of this keynote speech at the YouTube channel of the International Association of Educators. If you look at the chat session of our Microsoft Teams panel, you will see the links for the YouTube channel. You will also get the links for the IEA and INASET websites, and you can get more information from there. Now I would like to start the panel session. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Dirk Hastedt for accepting our invitation to give us a keynote speech at the Congress and joining us today to answer the questions of our Congress participants. Let me give you brief information about today's meeting. Congress Organizing Committee received around 20 questions for Dirk's keynote speech from the Congress participants. Unfortunately, we have only 30 minutes for this session. Therefore, I reorganized the questions under 6 categories. If time permits, Dirk will answer all these questions. I'm hoping it will time it. Welcome, Dirk. Thank you again for being here with us. Would you like to say something before we start answering the questions?
Sure, Yunus. Thank you very much for this invitation and for giving me the opportunity to talk to you in the keynote. I'm really sorry that I couldn't come to the location. We all miss, I think, this personal relationships. That is really nice and I'm really happy to hear that you had a very successful Congress, and I'm really looking forward to this session, and I'll try to do my best to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much, Dirk. We have limited time, therefore I'm starting asking the questions. The first question is from the Early Career Network of International Association of Educators. The head of the network says that it's very difficult for emerging scholars to participate in the longitudinal big budget projects. What are your recommendations for the early career researchers for their future endeavors in academia and in private sector in terms of finding and participating in the longitudinal projects? What opportunities does IEA provide for the emerging researchers?
Okay, I think it's a good question, and I really appreciate that there's interest to work in this area. I think as many of us do. We need more people working in this field, and we need more people working on the data. On one hand, all the data from all the international studies are available to download for every researcher. So even though you're not participating in the study directly, you have access to all the data. And this is a great opportunity. IEA provides all the data from all IEA studies on the website, and you can access it there. There's also tools to use the data and analyze the data. And furthermore, we also give opportunities like trainings that we are offering at conferences, but also in general every 6 months on how to analyze the data and help with that. So I would really recommend to take a look at that, and that's a big opportunity. We also have our journal, And we really appreciate all submissions, and that can be from emerging researchers as well as anyone else. They will be thoroughly reviewed. You will get feedback, and all the publications are for free for people submitting this. And lastly, there's always an opportunity also to apply for an internship in our IEA Hamburg office that will be then considered, and that can also bring you up to speed and help you getting into the area of international large-scale assessment, such as TIMSS, PEARLS, ICCS, and ICIMS.
Thank you, Dirk. I also would like to remind our colleagues, early career scholars, about the collaboration between World Education Research Association and IEA. Thanks to IEA provides us one research fellowship for 3 months. Was it for 3 months? To go to Hamburg office and to learn about the use of analysis of the data at the IEA center. For this information, please visit the website of the World Education Research Association. Now I would like to go to the second question. The second question is from the Dr. Wei Liu from China Normal University. And she asks, what do you envision for the future of educational research? Can you tell us how IEA prepares itself for that future? What are the IEA's long-term plans?
For IEA, as well as for most organizations, one of the big challenges today is that we are more and more living in a digital world, which means that what I'm seeing currently is that all international assessments are moving digital. Computer-based assessments are becoming the norm. Paper-based assessments are really, well, not used in a lot of countries anymore. And that has many reasons. One is, of course, that also teaching and learning is taking more and more place in the digital world. And this development also was prior to COVID-19, but also accelerated also to COVID-19. And we also see that our students around the world are using more and more online resources to find information and to distribute it, to communicate with others. So all the international assessments are moving digital. This is a big challenge because we don't want to lose trends. We are doing, for example, TIMSS since 1995, every 4 years. So we have to be very thorough and careful and not to lose trends and make sure that also the assessments, when we delivered in a digital format, are still on the same metric as the assessments before. And that's a big challenge for us. It's a big investment also for us as well as participating countries to ensure a good bridge. But this is where I see things are moving. And the digital environment, of course, has many, many more opportunities. On one hand, in terms of the materials that can be used in assessment. For example, in TIMSS, we have problem-solving and inquiry tasks, which are scenario-based items where students, for example, had to do an experiment to see which kind of fertilizer is working best on some plants. And that's a big opportunity. But what we also see is that while we have the online test, we can also collect log information. So how do students maneuver through the assessment? How long does it take them to work on certain items? And that's very, very important information. And I see that more research is needed here. We are collecting this information. But so far, I think there's still a gap on good theories about how this data can be used efficiently. And that's, of course, something that all researchers should also take as an opportunity. Think about theory-based. So it's not like see what we find in the data, but having a good theory, what can be researched with that data, and then go to the data and take a look at it. So I think it offers a lot of opportunities, this move to the digital world.
Thank you, Dirk, for the answer. Some of our colleagues are saying that they are having difficulty of connecting to the system. We are currently broadcasting this event at the YouTube channel, INASET YouTube channel. Please If you cannot access the system, please watch us from that channel. Now, I would like to move to the third question. It's from the Executive Committee of Kosovo Educational Research Association. They are asking, how does IEA collaborate with the national and international educational research organizations, research centers, and universities in order to formulate the assessment methods and standards?
The approach of IEA is to be very cooperative. So when the IEA decides that they want to conduct a study, then we invite all countries where we have contacts to participate in the study. If a country participates in a study, they, together with the IEA, develop everything jointly. So we don't develop something on our side and put it to the people, but it's always a very collaborative atmosphere. So we usually, before COVID-19 in person, now sometimes more virtually, are meeting all participating countries about every 6 months. And then we jointly discuss the framework of the assessment. Then we do the item development together with the representatives of the countries, as well as the background.
When you say the representatives of the countries, do you mean the national associations, universities, or the ministries of education? Can you clarify? Because the question is about non-governmental organizations and universities.
Yeah, every country that wants to participate in a study nominates a national research center with a national research coordinator. And IEA has different members. So sometimes we have members from ministries, but we also have research organizations being our members. If it's a research organization, mostly they are also the National Research Center. If it's a ministry, then sometimes they have a research center within the ministry. Otherwise, they also contract it out, and sometimes there's even tendering processes within these countries. And then research centers within the country can apply to become the National Research Center. And that's a very, very interesting position, of course, because you give input to all these and you help developing that, but it's also a huge capacity developing atmosphere, because you learn how to develop an assessment framework. You know how to develop items at all the stages, sampling, scaling up to the reporting. So everything is done jointly with all the countries that are involved in our studies. And for us, every country has the same voice. So it's not that someone is dominating it, but every country participating in IEA studies, no matter if they are IEA member or not, have the same saying in our studies and contribute the same to our study frameworks, items, and everything.
Thank you, Dirk. The third question is from the Big Data in School Evaluation Project team. They are asking you a question about, can you give us an example of the best practices of use of IEA data to improve education in a participating country?
Okay, one example is, the challenge is now the one example, which to pick.
Yes.
Because there's many examples. And actually also on our website, we have 5 reports on policy impacts of IEA study. 2 of them are supported by the World Bank. 3 are done by independent researchers who collected this information. And you see that there's a wide variety of policy implications. For example, from some countries, we know, since our studies are curriculum-based, we review first the curriculum. So without any analysis and even doing the assessment itself, we see that countries are comparing their national curriculum to the curriculum of other countries. And that for some countries has some impact, because they see that they have a different curriculum, which is fine, but you can also look at it and see what are others doing. And some countries actually have them change their curriculum. There's, for example, one country that I remember that had for our Pearl study in the curriculum that at the end of grade 4, students should be able to read a text of 100 words with some kind of understanding. That was much, much lower than most other countries' expectations for grade 4 students. Also, the achievement finally was lower, but they saw that they need to change the curriculum, and that's what they did. On the other hand of the spectrum, I would talk about, for example, Chinese Taipei. Chinese Taipei, like many other Asian countries, is a very high achieving country. But when they compared the TIMSS results to the results of other neighboring countries, they saw that the achievement distribution has a very long tail. Means they have a lot of students who did not so well, although the average achievement was quite high. And they looked at that in more depth and found that these students need more help. So they initiated a new policy to help also students who are lower performing to catch up with others, which we also could see then in the next cycles of TIMSS, that actually this tail of the distribution really shrunk, and the average achievement became, and the achievement distribution became much narrower. So I think it's up to different countries to look what's interesting for them, and to do the analysis, and then find out what are policy recommendations for them. Because at IEA, we don't do policy recommendations. We think it's up to the countries to determine what's best and most appropriate for their country. So we always strongly encourage all countries and researchers in the countries to take a look at the data, make use of it, and analyze to improve the education of their respective country.
Thank you, Dirk, for the answer. Now the fifth question is coming from the Qualitative Research Network of Turkish Education Research Association. And what they are saying is that there is an escalation in global standardized testing and dramatically increased reliance on quantitative measures in many countries, which rank and label students as well as teachers and administrators according to the results of the test, generally known to be imperfect. What would be your recommendations for the policymakers in terms of using global testing rankings to propose policy changes in their local context?
Yeah, I think there is a task for every one of us here, which is we see that there's a strong focus on these rankings in the media. Honestly, my personal opinion is that the rankings are of the least important information, and it's not really helpful to improve policy. Rankings themselves, they can change depending on other countries' achievement and how it is changed. If countries join a study, if they drop out of a study, all that has implications for rankings. So I would really recommend not to look at rankings at all. It's not really helpful. Trends for each country and in perspective to others, that is informative. Also, especially how achievement is related to other factors. Factors like gender, but also factors like teacher education, is there a gap between rural and urban schools, or whatever might be the position. In IEA, we are trying really to focus on other key messages, because of course it's an easy message to have a ranking table, and journalists sometimes like easy messages. So I think it's our task and all of you, your task, to draw away the attention from these rankings to the real key findings of these studies, to see what helps improving education, what are the key takeaways. And these are sometimes also simple and as simple as rankings. So I think we have to work all hard to draw away these focus on rankings to results of the studies. And this will then help to improve education. It will also, in my opinion, help getting away the resistance we sometimes see towards these studies. And one final remark on that, we always need to look at these international studies as indicators of education. But it's only indicators. It should not become a target. It's not in any country's interest, or shouldn't be, I think, to be number one or among top 10 or whatever in these international assessments. But it's more important to have a good education. All these international assessments are giving just a snapshot. And in TIMSS, we are looking at mathematics and science achievement and Pearls in reading. Also, PISA is looking at mathematics, science, and reading. But education is so much more. So we always should have a holistic perspective on education. So we should get away from having this target of being good in international assessments, but just view it as an indicator. I think it's a helpful indicator. It helps evidence-based policies, but it should not become more. And also there, I think it's a task for all of us to see what's the role of international assessments and not overemphasize. We are not the ones determining where you should be. Every country should determine itself what they want to achieve. And we are giving indicators for that. And this is what we should do. And we should not overstep this role. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I also understand the concerns of qualitative researchers. The question came from the Qualitative Research Network. I understand the concern, but 2 years ago, I invited several colleagues from OECD to discuss this issue, and then they submitted a book proposal to my edited book series, and then they sent case studies. I was surprised that OECD is interested in conducting case study and then publishing these qualitative research studies. I think, as you mentioned, that instead of focusing on the rankings, and we should celebrate both qualitative and quantitative traditions to inform the policy. Yes, I think we can do more in the future about this issue. We shouldn't turn this discussion into the paradigm war between quantitative and qualitative. We should see it as a joint collaboration to contribute to policy making through qualitative and quantitative traditions. Thank you very much, Dirk, for the answer. Now the final question is coming from the Kazakh colleagues, Kazakhstan, the representatives for the INASET. They are saying, in many countries, inequality has dramatically increased over the last decade, explaining the widening educational gap between rich and poor. Can you tell us how evidence generated from big data research could help reduce the educational inequality and serve the common interest around the world? As far as I know, you have publications in terms of this topic. I think you are the right person to give an answer to this question.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I think there's many answers to that and many examples also of that. What these international studies are doing is we are not only assessing the students worldwide, but we are also collecting a big variety of background information from students, from the mathematics, science, and reading teachers, from school principals. And for the grade 4 students, we also ask the parents. And what is really, really interesting is to look at the relationship between some of the background information and then the achievement. Let me give 2-3 examples of what that could be. One example that I found interesting also with respect to COVID-19 is that there is a huge focus on the availability of computers. But when we looked into the data and the differences in socioeconomic background, we saw, yes, indeed, students from lower socioeconomic background have a lower access to computers, and many of them lack digital devices, which, if we have digital teaching, is a big problem. But we have even more students who are lacking a quiet place to work. And although you can easily, more or less easily, give computers to students and help them with that, it doesn't solve the problem that they don't have a room for themselves to work in a quiet place. And to have that in focus and to see these are also things that we need to keep in mind when we talk about distance learning, for example. That's very important. And that's a focus that our studies can help making. We also see, for example, when we look at the reading achievement, we found that early engagement with students have a very positive effect. So not only attending kindergarten, but also what parents do with the students prior to grade 1 education and prior to kindergarten even sometimes. And that's also one of the results that we saw from our studies. And one policy effect of that is that in some countries, there's now initiatives like Read to Your Child, so that it helps promoting that parents should also interact more with their kids, read with them, have together enjoy reading, because that has long-term effects in grade 4 and even later on the reading achievement of these students. So there are things that can be done. An international large-scale assessment gives you some indication of policies that could help also mediating these differences that we see emerging. But actually, yes, it is a threat. And also when we move to digital teaching and learning, it is of course a threat. My last example I would like to give is from our computer literacy study. And there we found that the students' achievement in computer literacy depends much, much more on the student background than most other subjects like mathematics, science, and reading achievement. And we found that this is the case because in many countries, it's not taught in schools. Students are getting this knowledge and the abilities either from home, or they don't learn it at all. Teachers assume students to be digital native, and they don't need to be taught how to use digital equipment. But it turns out that this is not true. It's a myth. And therefore, also here, we can detect this myth, and we can help finding solutions also to support especially lower performing students and also improve their educational outcomes. And I think this is the role that we can play, and studies like TIMSS, PEARLS, ICLS, and ICCS help finding what makes a difference, and then helps countries finding policies to mediate these.
Thank you very much, Dirk. I think we have 1 minute left. I am getting messages from the colleagues and then questions. Unfortunately, we have only 30 minutes session. This is a post-conference keynote session, therefore we have limited time. But in the future, we are going to invite Dirk to our conferences. If he accepts, we will be very honored and very happy to host you, Dirk. Thank you very much again for joining us as a keynote speaker and joining today as a keynote speaker for the post-conference session. Both keynote speech of the Dirk and the post-conference panel session we share the link on the chat option. If you visit our chat, we are also going to share the link our social media accounts, and you will be able to see the sessions at our YouTube channels. Dirk, would you like to add something? The last word to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for all your interest and for your very, very interesting questions. I also wish we would have more time, and I really appreciate to have another opportunity. And should there be another conference, I'm happy to join, hopefully in person then, so that we can interact more and I can answer more of your questions. Thank you very much, Yunus, and thanks everyone for the interest.
Thank you very much. We came to the end of the session. And if you would like to get more information about the IEA and International Association of Educators, we shared also links of these websites of this to organization to this website. Please also check the World Education Research Association website, because IEA is an institutional member of the World Education Research Association, and IEA provides a research fellowship in collaboration with the World Education Research Association, Hamburg University, and they are hosting one research assistant for 3 months at the Hamburg Center for IEA Research and Data Analysis Center. Okay, thank you very much. hoping to see you at the next event of the International Association of Educators.
Thank you very much, and goodbye to everyone.